Right, so questions to the panel. That was, you lost me a little bit at the end, I'll be fair. And maybe a picture paints 1,000 numbers in your case rather than maybe words, but fantastic level of detail. And I'm sure it's becoming normal and going into, you know, where I think you just took us, Ian, in terms of that VR and AR stuff, which, you know, for me, that's the biggest part of where we go next with BIM, is opening it up earlier and getting people involved earlier. And troubleshooting much earlier. Fantastic. So, any questions, points, clarification? Anything at all? Then we'll let you go.
Yeah. Must have been really good.
It was.
Or not.
Yeah, go on then.
Charles, just one question. The bank, your innovative program.
Innovative contractor engagement, yes.
Did that impact your timescales to any great extent?
What, for tendering?
In terms of
Yeah, you need to give longer period of time for tendering, yes, because essentially the competing contractors are doing a design. So you've got to plan ahead, but it pays dividends. As you can see from what we achieved there in savings and value. So yeah, more time to tender.
And just another question from me, if that's okay with everyone. You mentioned about walking the fire brigade through. Did that actually happen, or is that something you think should?
I think it's something that should. We sort of developed this towards the end of the project.
Yeah.
In view of maybe taking some of this stuff forward for our next project. So we've used it with various different clients to show them what's possible, but we haven't really fully embedded it on what we're doing.
But actually, on that note, going back several years, I remember we used to go to to get your design approved by the fire brigade. You have to have what's called a qualitative design review, or QDR, and we always prepare a presentation, etc., for them. So I can't remember which London Underground office it was, but on the Victoria Station upgrade days, that we got a full 3D printout of the entire model, and it was in the foyer. Right? And as the fire brigade came through, we spent, before the meeting actually started, spent 15 minutes just looking at this 3D printout. When we got into the room, they basically said, we don't really need to see the slides. That's the best QDR we've ever had down there. And that was a big lesson, actually.
Yeah.
So we're thinking we'd do the same thing virtually this time, but without printing.
I mean, the number of projects I've worked on, you know, whether it's an onshore wind farm or some other surface asset, you know, where you're almost scared of the visual impact it's going to have, or the physical impact it might have, you know, noise, things like that. Yeah, to be able to be part of that process and to physically step into it, you know, for me is where we've really got to go with this now. We've now clearly got the capability, and it's the merging of the gaming side with the BIM side, with the ability to have access to that data, rather than, you know, the ones I've done where we've had a wireframe and someone driving it, and you can go to 10 feet above the ground and view it from the bedroom window height, but it needs a person to do that for you, and it's on a you know, PC next to the desk, and you can't get access to it, or you produce a video fly through and you put that as an animation on a website for people to view. But now we're able to sort of do both and have people wander around it themselves, which for me is hugely, you know, it's impressive, but it's also very transformative in terms of building trust with stakeholders, whether they're regulatory or neighbourly. You know, for me, it's the equivalent of taking cake round and saying, hello, I've just moved in next door. I'd like to be a friend, and I'd like to explain why this is going to, you know, be okay. Can we talk about it? So I don't know if there's any comments on that or anything else.
Just a couple of things. Have you thought about doing one of those walkthroughs with some people flow going through at the same time, so people can understand what it would feel like with other people going through? So, you know, think about, for example.
So internally in MOTS, not in this project, but we've got a pedestrian modelling team that have took this sort of thing and actually, well, people are modelled as rectangular blocks currently, but they've imported their pedestrian modelling simulation, so you could actually do that with people walking around you. But there's also other use cases in that, in terms of, say, wayfinding, say, find your way out the station, all the signs are in there, off you go. Or a light failure, or there's some smoke in there, but the applications, I think, of using that sort of information are huge.
the emergency side of things as well as normal and busy.
We looked at a training module as well where you stand and look at an asset for 3 seconds or something, the panel opens and you need to carry out actions in a certain order. So the idea that operatives could be trained before going to site, they've virtually done these operations, and when they get there, oh yeah, it is that. This is the order.
So like bomb disposal, when he's going to blow up a dam, then we've already diffused it before we've got, brilliant.
So we use passenger modelling like that for the design of our station tunnels and all our open spaces underground. It's called Legion, and it plots actual virtual people moving to the station. You can see it's like flow theory, you know, where they back up and you have to expand the tunnel or get rid of some obstacles.
And certainly on the surface where you've actually got 2 or 3 people have mentioned mobile data, you've got real data on real movements on the surface. And then, okay, it might be a blob at the moment or a block, but it's a real thing. And that, again, that for me, that's a really, that's a next step, but a very small next step in my view, because the data exists and we can really use it. And you can then introduce changes and see what effect they have as well, which I think is very interesting. So, the world's really opening up in that sense, but also semi-automating, which is a bit scary. Any other last final thoughts from anyone or from
Jennifer.
the panel? Oh, sorry, hello. Sorry.
This is a question really for Charles, I think. You talked about the fact that you obviously need to expand your stations because there can be more people going through them. But all those people are going to be pouring out onto the street above ground. How much have you guys done as LU or TfL to understand and use, maybe go from the BIM scale to the city scale?
Quite a lot. We engage with our surface colleagues and we will move bus stops and road crossings, pedestrian crossings, away from congested areas outside stations. So it is a joined up piece, and we will modify bus routes and bus services to cope with outflows from stations. So it's quite integrated.
That must be having quite an impact around places like Bond Street, where the number of people arriving is huge.
Yes, but it's obviously central London, yes, but also more on the periphery. We were looking at what we're going to do about Brixton yesterday, for instance, because it gets very busy and people queue back outside, and we're going to have to change the bus stops and the pedestrian crossings to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, really good point. And Angus this morning talked about the transport for X, all these transport for wherever cropping up, and that's a really good example of where you get that integration of different intermodal as well, and that fantastic example, really good. Okay, any last thoughts, any more comments, questions?
I was going to say something actually that I cut out because I knew I was overrunning. And it was about ground movement and an aspect of collaboration. My colleagues here in the professional design world are very, very conservative, as they said, in predicting ground movements. And they probably do this for behavioural reasons, but they also do it to protect their PI exposure. And what happens is that we have ground movement predictions that are never realised. So, for instance, Crossrail Tunnel going through West London, we have areas where the ground movement was predicted to be 12.5 millimetres and it was 1 millimetre. So we do mitigations in anticipation of what the prediction is. So, for instance, we loosened all the tunnel rings at the Northern Line at Tottenham Court Road in anticipation of a 12.5 millimetre movement. There was no movement, therefore there was no need to have done that work, so it's abortive. So this comes back to collaboration and sharing risk. And if we share risk more, we can save money. Because if I understand what my consultant thinks the risk is, I can say to him, don't bother with that, I'll take that risk. So I think that is an area where there is room for further collaboration and some really outside the box thinking.
It's a really interesting point.
can I
That
just-
transparency that builds that conversation.
Just to add to that, I think it's a very fair point, Charles, but I think you should have smelled a rat as soon as anyone told you they're predicting 12.5 millimetres of ground movement, because anyone who tells you they can predict ground movement to within 5 millimetres accuracy is having you on, I think.
Obviously, wasn't you.
It was, but you're right.
Yes.
You are right.
Maybe it's in an inch.
Yeah, but you're
Half an inch.
but the point is true.
Yeah.
The point is true.
So,
Yeah,
a London Underground
sensible
inch,
allocation of risk is the point. The point is well made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, really good
Yeah.
point. And that's one of my the recurring themes is that this data is actually transformative in terms of transparency and trust.
I'm sure there's been
Personally,
and certainly I'm sure there's been a hell of a lot of unnecessary compensation grouting over the years.
Yeah, yes, all those millions of litres of grout that are.
Yeah.
So we've underpinned London, not just a
We-
couple
that's-
of
we
buildings.
have underpinned London, yeah.
Right, well thank you very much. Just closing thoughts. The music themes work really well today, so my closing thoughts, I'm going to focus on that. So at the start, Tim Broyd opened with the word true, so that was Spandau Ballet. Angus professed to have, or confessed probably, to have been involved in the 1997 election with the Labour Party, so that has to be Dee Reen. Things can only get better, and they sort of did for about a year or two. California Dreaming, Mamas and Papas, because you didn't mention California, but it's in there, right? So we'll go with that. This is your playlist, by the way, for the weekend. Chris, who's also gone, said he got lucky, so I was going to go with Daft Punk, but as he was leaving, we agreed Kylie. I should be so lucky. Jennifer, well, I started with, anyway, I'll move on. Your obsession with bridges. Bridge over troubled water. I think it was more the bridge that was the trouble than the water, perhaps, but you've nailed it, so that's good. People are people, David, Depeche Mode. I think that is reasonable. Duncan, history repeating. I came there. He's gone. He's not here, is he? No, he's gone. Propellerheads featuring Shirley Bassey. It's a really good track if you've not heard that in a while. It's fantastic. She's booming, and it's very good. David from France, Fly Me to the Moon. So I was going to go with that. Frank Sinatra. Charles, there's only one going underground the Jam, so sorry about that. Cheap. And because there was a lot of data and a lot of visualization, I went with More Than Words by Extreme for you guys, Rob and Ian. It was that or PJ and Duncan, and you wouldn't have appreciated that. So
That's fine.
But one of you might have done from the accent, but anyway. So thanks very much, everyone. That was a totally unserious summing up. The serious version is, this is such an interesting area. It's developing solidly, but pretty quickly. I've had a couple of discussions with people last week at the event, which was aligned, and today, and I think there's some genuine interest in how do we keep this discussion and sort of almost network going along. So I'm certain we'll talk about that, the what next in terms of this debate and discussion, but also keeping in touch as well. So swap cards, say hello if you haven't already, drive safe and travel safe as well. All right, well done. Enjoy that infrastructure. Thank you very much.